passing it down. And yeah, I got one. Yeah. Well, you got it twice. We're gonna.
They said there's an online option.
Oh, they did. I'm just gonna go. I'll sit there and.
Oh, it's here.
Yeah. You guys want to sign on too, or? Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Should we start, Jonathan?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll call the Planning Commission for the City of San Clemente to order on Wednesday, February 7th, 2024 at 6 p.m. in the San Clemente City Hall City Council chambers. I've asked Commissioner Davis to lead us in the pledge tonight.
Yes.
If you don't mind.
Please stand. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Terrific, thank you. We are in full attendance. All commissioners are present, and I want to say it's good to see you all. Thank you all for being here.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, it's been a while. So roll call is complete with everyone in attendance. Following along on our agenda, number 4, special order of business, special presentations, none. We have item 5, 2 minutes for approval tonight, A and B. Any comments about the minutes from anyone? A motion for approval?
Motion to approve the minutes of December 6, 2023.
For the regular study session and the regular meeting?
A and B, please.
A and B. Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Prescott Loeffler for approval. A second?
Second.
Second from Chair Pro Tem McCacken. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
You have an-
Number of abstentions.
I need to abstain.
Right, so all those in favor, how many, let me see hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. What about you?
Abstain.
You're abstaining. Okay, so we have 4 approvals and we have 3 abstains. 3 abstains, 4 approvals, motion carries. And just for the record, the abstentions are because they were not in attendance. Item 6 is oral or written yes, yeah,
It's a different group. Here we have 2.
So we do them one by one?
I think we might have to, just for the record.
That's fine, we can do that.
Yes, let's separate those out if we have
So,
different abstentions.
maker of the
for each.
motion, do you mind just doing it again with let's just repeat it for the regular 5A minutes of the regular study session.
Okay. I make a motion to approve 5A, minutes for the regular study session of the Planning Commission of December 6, 2023.
All right.
Second.
Second by Chair Pro Tem McCacken. All those in favor for the study session? Aye.
Aye.
So we have how many ayes? 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. And any abstentions?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
You're an,
I'm an abstention.
Davis is an extension,
McCann.
and McCann's an extension, and Camp. Are we good there? So the motion does carry. 4 approval, 4 ayes, 3 abstentions. So number B?
5B, I make a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting of the Planning Commission of December 6, 2023.
Second.
Okay, second by Chair Pro Tem McCacken. All those in favor? Aye. So we have 5 ayes, and then abstentions?
McCann.
McCann and Davis. All right. So five ayes, 2 abstentions, motion carries. Thank you. Any oral communications? We have 1 member of the audience, and you're here for our first item of new business, right? Okay. So there are no oral communications. 7 is consent calendar. There are no consent calendar items tonight. 8 is public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight. Item 9 is new business. We do have 2 items of new business tonight. Item A is an interpretation 24-002 for recreational vehicle park in open space, which is part of the San Clemente specific plan. And we do have a staff report from Christopher Wright.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. This is Christopher Wright, Lead Project Planner. This is a request to make an interpretation that RV campgrounds are similar to a park use in the Rancho San Clemente specific plan, private open space zones. The applicant wishes to submit zoning applications to establish an RV campground, but that is not a specific use that's listed in that specific plan. And this is the page of the specific plan. You can see which uses are listed. You're not going to see RV campgrounds. So our zoning ordinance allows a member of the public to apply for an interpretation to find a use similar to another that's listed. That could either mean a minor interpretation or a major. And that is whether something is more of potential public concern or not. And the city planner has forwarded this to the Planning Commission, finding that it's more of a major interpretation. And that's why it's before you tonight. The interpretation is that, request is that it's similar to a park. And you're gonna see here that that's one of the conditionally uses that are allowed in the civic plan. What that means is that if the Planning Commission agrees with this interpretation, then a conditional use permit would be required along with development type applications to do a RV campground. So it wouldn't just be allowed. It would have to go through a public hearing process in which we would review the site plan and the size and intensity of the use, the facilities, and so on. Right?
Christopher,
Yes.
pardon my interruption. Could you speak a little closer to the microphone? I hear it's not catching your audio very well on the recording.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. Where was I? Okay, so us and staff reviewing this type of application, we need to evaluate two findings. The first is that the use is similar in nature to the park use in terms of its function. And the second is that it's as restrictive as the park use, in which it's being compared in terms of potential impacts. And staff reviewing these findings can make a recommendation to support this interpretation. And I'll just explain some reasons. So the first is that a park use typically will have a number of facilities for active type recreation uses. It'll have driveways, lighting, sometimes for night games, baseball diamonds, hookups for utilities, and an RV campground has also similar facilities for active type recreation uses. It could include like a kiosk, like a entryway to a park, sign, could have connections to utilities to allow for a vehicle to stay there for a certain amount of time. There could be areas set aside for potential concessions that you might find at a park, and then lighting or patio space to set aside from the RV if someone wants to eat lunch or whatnot, like a picnic area. And then there might be some recreation type facilities like bocce ball courts, and you see parks have recreation type facilities like that. An example of RV campgrounds is local. The local state beach has RV campground spaces. And the type of impacts that you'd see at a park, staff believes, is something comparable to an RV campground, obviously depending upon the public review process for the permits, where we would evaluate the actual design, the size, the hours, how long someone could stay there, and so forth. So with those reasons, staff can support this interpretation and is here to answer any questions.
Can you give me an idea of what a recreation center would look like?
A recreation
that?
center would be more like a facility where like a tennis club that you'd see in the Rancho San Clemente specific plan.
So from what I see, where parks, athletic fields, and recreation centers, that's kind of, seems like it's all conditioned for use of local residents more than people visiting, yeah? Would you see it like that or no?
We see it as recreational facilities. It could be a park, an athletic fields, or a recreation center, or you can have all of the above on a property.
Christopher, let me, before I open it up to further questions, let me just jump in real quick and just see if I can summarize. Just based on Commissioner Davis's questions, I just want to jump in for a minute and clarify what I believe is before us tonight. So, we have a Rancho San Clemente specific plan. In that plan are the different zones that are defined. One of the zones is private open space. In that zoning is a set of permitted uses. Currently, the RV park is not a permitted use. However, there is a provision within the specific plan that states, should an applicant seek to a determination if a potential use could be permitted, they can make, a request could be made, and then that's sent to the Planning Commission to make the determination if that use is compatible with the zone. And that's what we're doing tonight, is we're looking at a request to determine if an RV park would be compatible with this zone.
Kind of.
Okay.
It's actually a little bit more narrow than that.
Okay,
So is a RV campground similar to a use that is listed on this page for private open space?
got it.
In
Okay,
terms of function and potential impacts.
gotcha. Okay. Is everybody clear about that, what we're doing tonight? Okay. Commissioner Davis, do you have more questions that you wanted to ask? Okay. Commissioner Crandall?
I've kind of taken this a little
Your mic.
different.
Thanks.
I've taken this a little different direction and feel we should be determining what the authors of our general plan, our specific plan, and all of the mapping we're using to come up with these requirements and what their interpretation of what's a park. And I'll go through it when we do our discussions.
Got it.
But
Okay. No questions for staff at this time?
no.
Okay, Gary?
What are the boundaries of the Rancho San Clemente specific plan?
I have
Like
a
if I
map
look at
here.
Exhibit 2 or Exhibit 1, does it include the industrial area? Both
Yes,
above it and below it?
yes, this map shows you the land use map.
So it includes the apartment? Does it include the residential, like the apartment system that's up there on the Del Cerro?
Yes, all the colored zones here are in the Rancho San Clemente specific plan on this map.
Where is there is there any other large private open space? Because we're talking about private open space, not public open space.
Private open space is all the lighter green shaded parcels on this map.
If you don't mind me jumping in, it's the OS2 designation, right? Yeah.
But how much of that is flat ground?
It's mostly hilly.
So this interpretation would only be to this specific plan.
Yes,
It wouldn't be a total city code. So somebody couldn't come from Talega necessarily and want to do it without an interpretation.
correct. This interpretation is narrowed to Rancho
But
San
you could
Clemente.
use the San Clemente specific plan as a precedent to allow it in Talega or to allow it in Marblehead.
Sure.
How is it different from, remember when the Elks Club asked for recreational parking in their parking lot and we denied it? How's it? If we were to allow this interpretation, how How do we jive those two
This is a open space park
versus a
type
parking lot?
versus a parking lot and a mixed use, I think it's a mixed use zone.
Because there was no residential around it. The only thing here that allows me to maybe say yes is that there's no residential directly impacted, right next to it. But it does bring up the traffic concerns of big vehicles, like when the community went crazy about the possibility of Amazon being up, in that area. Those are my concerns, is the
Okay.
precedent and whether it would apply to other specific plans or areas of
Okay.
town.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move on, but I do want to just interject, again, Christopher, correct me if I'm wrong. Tonight, we're not approving an application for an RV park. We're simply approving that it could be a permitted use in this zone. And if somebody wanted to pursue that, they'd have to submit a conditional use permit application. It would return to us, and then we would review that application for the merits of the application.
That's correct.
Thank you.
But it would allow the application,
To come forward.
right?
Be an,
Yeah.
yeah, it would
that's-
allow an
that's
application.
important, Right.
Vice Chair Camp, your
So it does have
questions?
effect.
Yeah, I think we understand what we're looking at, which is a potential use that could set a precedent. That's, I think, the concern. I probably could have looked this up, Christopher, but I didn't have time. Did you put in our packet the other uses that are allowed in this OS2 zone? Is it in here?
It is, it's on the next page. I have it on the screen.
It's right there under C.
I don't think there's any more. Oh, okay, and there's utilities also. So these are
5-19.
permitted, and then these require a conditional use permit under this section. And that's a page in your staff report.
It is.
So I can tell you it's attachment,
Let me see if I can.
attachment 4.
If you can pull up 17.
It's the last couple pages of your staff report on this item.
You want to read this, if this be easier?
Here's the whole
So
list.
these are permitted. These are
Mine is in attachment 3.
No.
these
Okay.
uses here. So
I
you
don't
can
have attachment
just
4.
see them real quick.
What page is it?
I printed this off.
I think it's in our packet.
Yeah, it's, I
Mine
printed this
stops
off
at
from the-
attachment 3.
Mine printed it off from the Rancho San Clemente specific plan.
There should be an attachment
Okay.
4.
Another question. We're looking at the use, right? So, and we are gonna have a discussion. It really, the packet that we did get was pretty detailed, in terms of what would go there. I assume they have a pretty good idea, of what they're gonna be proposing in this location. So I guess my question is, should we really be looking at the specifics of this project and have that come into play in terms of whether we're willing, or we think it's a good idea, to allow this use?
No, that has no bearing on the subject matter tonight. Tonight it could be a RV campground with a place for one RV. It could be any RV campground. However, the applicant's requesting this interpretation and provided that information, so we made it available to you.
Well, it seems to me, and we can get into this, I think, when we have a discussion, that there really needs to be something attached to this in order to make a determination like this. I mean, it's sort of an open-ended, I understand we have to review a conditional use permit application. But I guess I don't have a question about that.
I mean,
We'll just discuss
Okay,
it. So that's all I have right now.
okay.
My thoughts are probably really more for discussion, better handled in the discussion. It's not a question per se, but I just want to put my thoughts out there so people are thinking about it in the context of what we're hearing and stuff. And I noticed that Lifetime falls within that open space area, right? But is that kind of like a recreation center?
I think I'd have to check the map. I think it's actually,
It should be down to the left there.
Lower left.
it's an institutional.
No, that's the church, down to the left more. It's in green.
Is it OS1?
It's at the,
It is, yes. No, it's OS2. It is private open space. On this map, it's just delineated by that line weight, Christopher, just below the bottom of that.
Gotcha.
to the left of the RL, yeah.
Okay.
So I just wanted to point that out. But Christopher, you said that basically we're kind of sort of looking at this, or should be looking at it in two ways. One, the function, is the proposed function similar to what's listed as allowed or conditionally allowed? And two, the intensity of use. So to me, that intensity of use is entirely dependent on the size of the proposal. I mean, if we were to say yes, if you could throw RV spots all over all that green, well, that's kind of a great intensity of use increase over proposed parks, or my perception of their intensity of use. So to echo what Commissioner Kemp is saying, I think it kind of goes hand in hand. The scale of a proposal absolutely affects the intensity of use. So anyway, but that's, when we can discuss it in the discussion portion, but that's what I'm thinking.
Karen, did you have questions?
I do. Christopher, you were sharing what was similar. Can you tell me what the opposite of that would be for this project? How does it not line up with a park? Is there anything in here that would not be park-like according to the standards?
I don't think so. No, I mean, there's a local example of a park with RV campground in it. So I think that's an example not far from here.
That an O2 zone?
It's not an O2 zone. Actually, it might be in the general plan. I think it's a public open space
Isn't that state?
zone. No, it's a state park,
State
but it's a
park.
park.
Okay, so with that, on number 3 here, Exhibit 4, it says park means Bella Colina RV Resort, which is different from the state park. So if they did not have the word resort, would that make a difference?
No, it could be any name. The subject matter tonight all comes down to those two findings. And really, if we didn't attach the information, the question would be the same. It's just we provided you extra information because that's what the applicant chose to submit. And really, the applicant only needs to submit a written analysis, not much different from what staff did. Just how is it similar in terms of function, and then the second finding related to impacts.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, Christopher, I'm just trying to narrow this a little bit. I had 2 lines of questions. First is, we're talking about, I'm trying to find it here, private open space, 771 acres approximately in the plan. That's the whole green area, right?
That sounds right, yeah.
I cut and pasted out of the plan, so.
Okay, thank you.
And essentially, that is, a lot of it's passive because it's in a natural state. So its purpose is aesthetic relief, buffers, things of that nature. However, within that, you've got active uses, park-like uses, such as the golf course, in a much smaller area, which it says it's about 240 acres for those active uses. So my first question or line of questions is the clarification we're seeking is within the 248 acres, correct?
Yes.
In the
just as-
active zone of that private open space, not the passive uses.
The zones just doesn't distinguish between one area or another. It's just private open space zone, but the planning commission could, in the resolution, add language that this would only apply to active areas, active recreation and
Okay.
private open space. However, we would have to tie that to like an exhibit in the civic plan to make it clear where those areas are, so it's not subjective.
Okay. Then the second line is that we have to make two findings. Finding number one is function of use. In your report, you're essentially saying that the specific plan permits, with a conditional use permit, parks and golf courses. That's what you have.
Yes.
And then you go on to describe that parks can include things like structures, restrooms, lighting, shade, canopies, even sports fields, right? Okay, so that's kind of your interpretation of those uses are permitted currently. And so the finding that you're asking us to make is an RV park similar enough to those uses? That's really the question.
Depending upon how it's conditioned through public process.
Okay. As was pointed out, we do have the lifetime in there. And that's quite a bit more intense than these things described here. Is that part of what's also approved, conditionally approved for use?
It's a,
Facilities like Lifetime with the pickleball courts and big parking lots and all the rest that goes along with their facility?
it looks like that's a different zone. I can only presume that the uses aren't much different from what you see here for a private open space zone.
Okay, so we could gather that it's a similar and compatible use as what's going on with the Lifetime for this finding.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, I should note that on this list, you're not going to see the mention of golf course. Right? There's no golf, but there is a golf course.
Okay. And then there's the impact. That's the second finding, that this type of use would have an impact that's similar to these other uses that we've been talking about in terms of traffic, noise, so forth, parking. It's similar in terms of impact.
Yes,
That-
and I
That's the measure.
Yeah, I do think there's some questions about this. The planning commission isn't being asked to say that, to question the scale or intensity of a use. That's not what this finding is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the scale and intensity will depend on the actual design and scale of a use that's proposed, right? If it's one RV versus 15 RVs, the scale and intensity of uses changes. Also, are they staying there one day? Are they staying there 2 months, right? The intensity changes. And when can they check into the campground, right? Can they check in before 5 p.m. or can they check in at any time they want? That's going to affect things. That would all be determined through a public hearing process, not right now.
Gotcha.
So, I think the question more is the types of impacts that you see at a park or could see, like lighting being, existing during a baseball game, right? Or do cars come and go during certain periods for like a sport event? Like a bunch of parents go in and then a bunch of parents come out. Like those sort of natured of impacts is really what the planning commission's being asked to think
Okay,
about.
so-
Not like it's going to be at 2 p.m.
Yeah. Be very,
200
we're being very
trips.
broad and.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I have one more question.
Sure.
The narrow little black lines in this attachment number 3, are those parcel map boundaries?
These parcel lines?
Yeah, because is Lifetime on Del Cerro, is Lifetime that little,
Yeah, the intersection.
like rectangle, looks like Montana? Okay, how did they get that approved there? By an interpretation, because it was a Or because it was in this interpretation of recreational area?
There's a use for private open space.
Under a conditional use
And
permit
it
or what?
says recreation facilities,
Yeah.
limited to existing golf club and tennis club.
Permitted.
I don't
And-
think they're gonna allow those anymore, because it's limited to with addresses.
Did Lifetime get a CUP?
Yes.
That's a question.
Okay.
That was kind of what I was.
So it
leading
must
to.
have been under 3A Recreation Center with a
Okay, but
CUP.
the little black lines in all this green, what's that denoting? Title, parcel map number?
Those are parcel lines given to us by the County of Orange.
Different
And
individual
They can
parcels.
all be individual, privately owned, like where we have the industrial area? Does the developer own, like, most of that green around it?
I can't say, what they own.
Yeah,
We'd
see, I
have
think
to
all
check
these-
the ownership of
It's-
it.
For me, it's gonna be hard to make an interpretation because it may open up, like where we already have all the industrial complex, that if the developer owns OS2, they could bring in bulldozers, do what, because this is pretty slanted territory where they wanna put the RV. And it may allow for a lot of grading that perhaps originally we don't really want to have in the green open space, private. Because they knew when they developed it, they couldn't go up into the hill and grade it down to make it developable.
That's
Did you want-
considered in the CUP. I mean, that's the amount of grading that they propose.
Yeah, but the interpretation is like the little boy with his finger in the dam. And then so in a lot of ways, I'd like to see why we allowed, I think it's just that the public is sensitive on open space.
Did you want me to address what you're saying?
Well,
or-
sure,
or is that
but I
a
think
question or just?
For the
I don't-
interpretation, it's also important to know how Lifetime got there.
Okay.
That's not before us, though.
So.
No, but if we have to make an interpretation, what was their interpretation? Just that, but they still had to go through a CUP. This doesn't have that. It's an interpretation that allows it to kind of fit in there, and then they'll come with us with a CUP. But it does allow any developer, or any existing developer, if they own what technically under the existing rules is undevelopable, because it's OS2, to now take their finger out of the thing and now come for a CUP to develop that terraced
Everything.
area. Because they have to do a lot of grading to make this plot, a place where an RV can drive up onto it. So what's to say that like the area around San Clemente High School or in that area where you drive Del Cerro, that it makes all of that hillside now developable because they could terrace it?
Well, that should be
I
discussed.
think we're moving into discussion, so unless you have another, does anyone else have questions
No,
for
but you have to
staff?
agree that
I have a question.
this interpretation would allow those people to,
Yeah, let's just stay on the questions, then I want to see if our audience member would like to speak, and then we'll open up to discussion. How does that sound? We'll start at the end and we'll come back around again.
Okay, 3 questions. I suppose the golf course got a CUP? Right?
I think so. I
Okay.
didn't research it, but yeah.
Okay, and then it says recreation facilities, and then in parentheses, it says limited to the existing golf club and tennis club located. Okay, so what does that mean, limited to? Does that mean we will not allow any more golf courses and/or tennis clubs? Because it says limited to, parentheses, why is that? Just explain that real quick.
A recreation facility
So does that
can be
mean?
different than a park or a recreation center. A recreation facility, like the tennis club it's a fitness club.
What does the limited to with specific addresses mean?
That means in those locations, that's where you can have a golf club and a tennis club.
Okay, I got 2 more questions. One, there's a CUP with the golf course, probably,
I think
likely?
so.
Is there any restrictions that came with that, meaning no more development on that land and we have to dedicate X amount of open space? Because that CUP was issued? Have you looked into that?
I have not, but,
It's
if the
important.
application wouldn't comply with the general plan, previous conditions of approval, and so forth, then it would be denied. So
Yeah,
this
but
is just
I'd rather have that now than later. Like, I want to get this guy moving down the road and all of a sudden that's a whammy.
In all
Lack
due
of better
respect,
terms.
it's their responsibility and their due diligence to research that issue.
Okay.
And they were told that currently there's no way for them to apply for an RV campground, and the only way to do that is an interpretation or a specific plan amendment. So they've taken the direction that staff has given them.
Okay, yeah, maybe they should look into that just first. Now, Lifetime, didn't they request to build some parking? Was that in the Q2 or that area?
I'm not aware of that.
Do you know, Jonathan?
Yeah, I can
Please.
respond to that quickly. There was the Planning Commission back in 1991 authorized the parking lot that's there through a specific plan amendment at the time. Lifetime Fitness Management has had conversations in the past about potentially expanding that parking, but that would require another specific plan amendment. There was some conditions specific to that. So that would be a process that would open up environmental review in order to expand that parking lot. And no, we do not have an application from them. So there's nothing in process regarding that.
So they've never officially applied for that?
So the parking lot that's
Lifetime?
there was approved in 1991.
Talking about Lifetime.
Nothing has been submitted since that
okay.
to expand.
Okay, and then if this is like approved, I guess then how would restrictions be imposed of density if, like, we say, okay, we get an RV park, it is like X, but the impact of 100 RVs versus 30 RVs to that area with traffic, can we restrict that later?
Yes, similar to other conditional use permits, the Planning Commission would have the opportunity to apply conditions of approval based upon things like an environmental study, right? So traffic review and so on. There's ability to add a number of types of conditions of approval. One example staff could think of very early on in considering this interpretation would be how long someone could stay there. That seems like an automatic condition the city would have.
Sure, thank you.
He took the wind out of my sails,
Okay.
so move on.
Do you know what a typical density of sites is for a typical RV park?
I don't. We would most likely, in review of an application, take a look at some RV campgrounds, and however, each site is different. So some other facility might have more places for RVs than maybe what's suitable for this site. So we would have to also consider the surrounding uses, the topography, accessibility to the area with roads. You know, every site's different. I don't know.
Right. Okay, yeah, I could see, I mean, a lot of density in an RV park, and it's 24/7 density as opposed to a park that's, you know, sporadic and occasional and might be fully loaded on 4th of July, but most of the time it's not so dense. Okay, thank you, that's my question.
Karen, did you have any, on round two, a question?
Oh, just a few.
Okay.
So I'm going, Christopher, I'm going down, checking off each of the items here that you've listed as far as the similarities. And I can make a reasonable agreement, so I would say, with what you have here for a park-like facility. Where it does differ, where I was looking for something that's not similar to a park, is the insurance, which is 15. I don't know what page that's on, but it's number 15. And then also use of facilities not similar is that the golf course is excluded. So that would not be part of the park, is what you're saying?
I'm not following you. Which page are you looking at?
It's use of facilities, item 1, and item 2. It's actually item 2. The park resides within the Bella Colina Golf and Country Club. RVers shall make all reasonable efforts not to disrupt the golf course operations, whether by noise, nuisance, trespassing, or use of roads, pathways not specifically designed for park uses. And so that is,
That's not part of the staff report. That's the applicant's.
that's the applicant's, oh, okay, thank you. Okay, well,
Which really is not to be. a
not to
factor.
be a factor in this. Okay. Well, then, I'm stumped then, because I have questions now that I read that.
Yeah.
We will move on, then, I won't
That would
waste
be
any
the
more.
kind of thing we consider when, if there was an application.
Right.
And last call on questions for staff. Mr. Zane, did you want to speak before we have our discussion? If you do, just come on up to the podium, and we'll give you 3 minutes to, yeah. Or 10 minutes, is it 10 minutes? Yeah. Yeah, take your time, you've got 10 minutes to address, give your thoughts on the matter. If you could just speak into the microphone, that would be terrific.
Okay, I'm
Thank you
Mark
so much.
Zane. I'm the owner of Bella Colina and have been actively involved in it since 2008. I would hope that you've all been out there and seen the property. Obviously, we tried to maintain a high-class asset for the city, and I think we've done, a good job. The challenge is running a golf course. You have to take care of 238 acres for 450 members and have weddings and everything else. And it's very expensive and it's a tough proposition. So we, looked at ways of increasing revenue because expenses are going up. Insurance just doubled for less insurance and, it's just crazy numbers. So we looked at a residential development in the past, which had been approved, not through me, not when I was involved with the golf course, that I think was approved for like 300 homes, that was overturned by the Measure V. And we've been living with that, and so has the city, as far as any open space conversion for use of residential or some other purpose. During this time, we've spent a lot of money, upgrading the course, and we're in a good position other than this rain that just occurred, so now we have to do some fixing. But some people have come to me and said, there's some other things you can do other than a residential development that we think, the code will allow you to do, especially if it supports the golf course, is ancillary to the use of the golf course. A prior planner came and said, Mark, this should be something that you could do. And I'm not trying to tell you about the whole city, I'm talking about my property. How do we create more revenue using what we have in a good way that supports the city and that we can all be proud of? The area that we're talking about, if you're familiar with it, is just off of La Pata, and it's an open, not an open space, an undeveloped space just above the golf course that is developed. So we're looking at putting in something where we can have people come, stay. Usually it will be for anywhere from a few days to a few weeks, because you're basically coming in and, we expect these people that would want to, participate in golf. They can come, they can park. Across the street is Steed Park. They can go play pickleball. Down the street, they have the shopping center. Then you have the beach. I was told it's a wonderful idea to supplement the city as far as the ability to bring in tourists, have a place to stay, also to support the golf course in a way. We're not planning on building any kind of big sports arena. This is a place for them to come, to stay. Possibly, there may be some additional thing that in time we could look at, maybe, a swimming pool or something like that over time. But the intent, is to create something that is valuable, where people can stay, they can enjoy it. As far as, the amount of people and everything else, you have someone come in, park their vehicle, stay for 3 or 4 days. What is that? 2 trips in 3 days? Even if it was 100 people, it's less people that come and go from the pickleball court in 1 day, right now. Not asking really for a global interpretation. This is, I understand, just the beginning to let us pursue a possibility. You're only letting us move forward, compared to saying, sorry, you just can't do anything. It's important that we try to be somewhat creative today to create some value on something we have, because things are tough. So we need to try and do those things. So, we're trying to do something good, the right way. We'll use quality people. And, we understand this is not an approval of the project, just the ability for us to kind of move forward to see if we can create a project that you can then approve. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure you all have more knowledge as far as development, zoning, processing, and everything else than I do, but I'll give you at least my honest opinion as to, what the intention is. But, understand we're not trying to create a mobile home park where you stack one on top of the other, and you have 500 units there because you can fit them in. This is 20-something acres of property. My guess is you'll probably only have, a half a dozen units per acre, and they'll be, landscaped, they'll have, things, they're all going to be below grade as far as from the street. You won't even see them. There isn't any residential around. They'll overlook the golf course. I think it'll be could be a very, very impressive, asset. And at least the people that have knowledge in that industry and that business, think it's, needed and would be a home run, as far as, what people would like. So happy to answer any questions, that you have.
No, thank you very much. We'll open it up to questions. Vice Chair Camp, did you want to ask Mr. Zane some questions?
Yes, sir. Do you have any other facilities like this?
No.
that you've- Okay.
Thank goodness.
I'm not talking about the golf course. I'm talking about the RV.
No. I inherited this because back in 2003, I had made a loan on that golf course, and then the developer took it over, Michael Rosenfeld, from 2003 to 2008. When his approvals got overturned, he just gave me the property back during the recession. So I had to try and rebuild the property to at least where it is today. And in fact, it was a very expensive proposition. So
Okay.
didn't know this is the only, golf course or, type of property they own.
Do you plan to develop this yourself?
Not myself, but, certainly get quality people to, tell me right now I have a lot to learn very quickly. But I'm not a developer. I'm not a contractor. I inherited a property and I'm trying to do the best I can with it. Luckily, I can still, talk and think and ask, people some good questions and hopefully get good answers. And,
All right. So
You know,
you
so
plan
it'll
to
be
add a
there.
development partner.
excuse me?
You plan to have a development partner
Well,
that would develop the.
a partner, to help me develop it, but not necessarily someone that will have ownership in it.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak with the applicant? Thank you, sir, for
Okay,
appearing.
thank you.
Appreciate it. And your comments, too. Thank you very much. Okay. Who wants to lead off the discussion? Mr. Crandall?
I'm going to jump in because like I said at the beginning, I tried to get inside the planners' heads to find out why they used the word parks and what they thought it meant. And Chris did exactly what his responsibility was to do a very narrow look at what the park is, and I took a little broader one. Can you bring up LU 1A? Okay, this is the site map, and I want you to look at all the, it doesn't show the OS2s, but that's the light colors, the light green. And I want you to notice that every single one of those areas has a street around the perimeter of it, and one side of that street is developed and one side is not. The one to the open space side typically is not open. And the whole reason I put that in here is because there's more to it than just that. In our general plan, California state law requires the general plans to include two different but complementary chapters addressing natural resources and the conservation element and the open space element. Ours has combined the two into the natural resources section of the general plan. And this element establishes goals, policies, and aims at preserving and enhancing the city's biological, aesthetic, archaeological, mineral, and a number of different items. Can you pull up now, let's see, which one's this? NR1. This is Natural Resource 1. And scroll up to the area we're talking about. If you see those arrowheads, and you can see up in the upper right is the site we're talking about. And that is a major view corridor coming off Cerro and being La Pata, okay? And one reason that golf course is down kind of in the body of the site is so it's not affecting natural habitat view, et cetera, and ridge lines, okay? And all through this, aesthetic resources, there's a section here, our community is dedicated to protecting and enhancing these important resources in this section of the general plan in combination with the urban design, land use, and mobility and complete streets elements provides goals and policies aimed at protecting these resources and minimizing or preventing development that detracts from the enjoyment by residents and visitors. Okay? I'm sorry for getting wordy on here. Now, if you can also go to M2. Let's scroll up. You'll notice this one's kind of on the lower right there. La Pata is a green dashed line, which is a major recreation view corridor. And that's, the planners intentionally did this and planned to have one side of these streets open and the other side having the development on it. Let's see, what did they say here on the public view corridors? The city will preserve and improve the view corridors as designated in NR1 and NR2 and encourage other agencies and jurisdictions to do the same. So I'm starting to get in the mind of the planners and the so forth, that they were looking intentionally when this was done, and the golf course, I think, was built in '88. I think they had 9 holes originally, and I think the restrictions on them were to be down low, well below La Pata, so it's not visible. Even in the urban design element, figure UD1. Now, all these designations were done by the people who put together the general plan and the planners who planned these areas and wrote the specific plan. La Pata at Pico and Avenida Serra hitting La Pata are both gateways. And so they've been very careful to identify these as extremely important in their judgment as far as important resources. And they determined that golf courses, flat land, you've got a clubhouse that's going to be out there. They specifically decided that's a decent one, and I would suspect in their conditions of approval on the existing golf course, they probably pushed the limits, and that's as much as would be approved. There are 27 holes? Yes. Instead of 36. I mean, they could have gone 36, and you wonder why not. A business decision, or there could have been a restriction that that's enough for this area. So anyway, in our code, 1744, we've got a section, privately owned open space OS2. The general plan contains 2 categories for privately owned open space OS2, OS3, both of which are intended to accommodate privately owned space for passive recreational aesthetic enjoyment and protection of significant environmental resources, including sensitive habitat and topography. This is kind of giving my head around it when we get to what's at hand today, but I wanted the applicant to understand that if you get approval today on the park issue, you've got some huge hurdles in front of you. And I think everybody needs to know that this site was intended on being protected. And that's not going to be what makes me decide what is a park or not. But under the open space regulations, I went through every one. We can have a golf course clubhouse, recreational concessions, golf course is conditioned, the driving range is conditioned. It didn't say tennis courts, but I think there's tennis down there. No tennis down there? Okay. And then it, under, let's see, what section is this? This is under public, quasi-public, and institutional uses. They do say parks, and that word is used. Under residential uses, the only kind of residential use is a caretaker unit and related offices, which I think was probably gleaned from a golf course needing a starter and whatnot, and that's the only residential use. And then we have zone development standards also in that section that say open space zones and then development guidelines, because the majority of development standards for the open space zones will be determined through the site plan process, which is a conditional use permit. The following development guidelines are provided to be used in the discretionary project, along with applicable guidelines found in the city design guidelines. OS1, OS2, this is maintain public view corridors, which LaPata is. Avoid impacts on sensitive habitat areas and topographical features. I don't know if this qualifies for sensitive habitat, but it's certainly going to terrace a hillside in an open space. Provide for safe public access and maintain the sense of open space essential to the character of the area. Filling in a giant area with, on a full day, certainly does that, and that's the kind of thing that makes me think when they were drafting this, designing it, when they were thinking parks, they were thinking of what we conventionally think of as a community park. Flat, couple of bathrooms, a small concession, and some active courts and all. Not something like this. So they were thinking a park is a traditional, like Maxburg Park or whatever, in the community. So that's a little history on it. And in our plan, open space means, this is in definitions in our code, means land that will remain essentially undeveloped with the exception of permitted or permitted uses associated with individual zones. That tells me, okay, we've got an OS2 site that they did allow a golf course, so anything related to that would be fine, the driving range, the so forth, and provide for the preservation of environmental resources, including topography features, the protection of life and property for environmental hazards, and recreation opportunities. That's the hurdles that this project's going to have to go through and meet all those before this particular site can accommodate this kind of use. And everything I've seen gives me, I mean, if somebody asked me what a park was, could I consider a RV park as a park. Personally, I probably could, but I don't think that was the intention of the code, the general plan, or the planners of the site, et cetera. So unless somebody convinced me otherwise, I don't think I can't make the findings that a motorhome park or RV resort, whatever it wants to be called, and terracing that particular site, which isn't in question today, can be considered a park in this area. So, thank you, Chris, for pulling those up.
Please. I sure can.
I can't disagree, certainly with anything that you pointed out. So I appreciate that. And I think what you're attempting to do at least is to just point out the fact that it may not pencil, something like this, because.
And I wanted the applicant to know and be aware, and everybody to know that maybe I guess this isn't a discussion, it's your time,
Well, we can have it back and forth.
that we can certainly pass it and let it go to the next level, but I don't want to give
False sense.
But I think
the other
that-
option. I've got one real nervous thing that doesn't fall into my conditions, but with our environment, we're finding that uses we think we have squared away with a swipe of the pen out of Sacramento can become something else. And I don't think a swipe of the pen from Sacramento is going to take away open space, but they'll certainly convert something from one thing to another.
Okay, so, what we're looking at here is a comparison. And with uses that are allowed, with the conditional use permit. And in my mind, I can envision an, RV park. They're called coaches, by the way.
At a certain size.
That's properly designed, that could end up being a nice park. If it had, and even better than let's say a ballpark, where it's a bunch of turf and then some buildings. I think we do need to make the applicant aware of the fact that we're gonna be looking for something that enhances what we would like to think of as open space. And I think that's possible at this location. This site may actually be too small. At what is it, 20, how many acres? 25 acres.
100 and something units. And
Well, yeah,
that's
but we're not evaluating the number of units.
I realize that.
We
but
may
it can
end up-
accommodate that.
As we evaluate this, and hopefully we'll still be around to do so, I think there could potentially be an opportunity here to develop a piece of land that's really just dirt. It's just natural weeds and grass out there right now, that would become an amenity that fits the park intent, the intent of what a park should be. And to me, a park is not necessarily a place where you can throw a baseball, or where you can, I think of a park as, a place where you can hike, where you can view, nice landscapes, softscapes especially. There's a lot you can do with open space using, natural looking shade structures. We don't want to see something that's paved with the rows of coaches, or RVs. Those things are massive. Those things cost over $1 million now. I've been to a couple of these RV parks, although they like them to be called coaches. I've been reminded of that many times. So I think, what we're looking at here tonight is, they're not proposing to build any permanent structures. They're proposing to put pads where they can pull in and pull out a coach. And I'm just discussing this. I'm not even sure I'm convinced, but I think it's worth considering that if it's properly done, it could actually be a nice amenity for the city of San Clemente and for the golf course. And could really get that to a level where it's getting the kind of traction that it should in a location like that. So I think, I'm leaning towards, let's allow the use as being compatible and being a park if it's properly developed. And, we have so many of these open spaces that are just open, they're natural, and that's usually not a good thing necessarily. It's a fire hazard potentially. There's a lot of negatives with just having open space. And there's really no incentive for an owner of a property like this to improve it unless there's some revenue to be generated, And so, I mean, you guys have seen nice landscapes, but there aren't that many in this area that you can really view, especially in a big open area. I mean, I sent some images to Chris. I don't know if you got those. I sent them to Meredith, but it was this afternoon. You might not have got them.
I don't.
But some really nice parks that have a really nice and sort of a natural setting. And I would like to be able to consider a project here that we could review and say, hey, it's 25 acres. You're only going to get 3 of these coaches per acre or whatever. Whatever we see is well-developed, well-planned, well-designed, that could end up being a real benefit to the city. Because that's what we're trying to do here, right? I totally agree with what you're saying, Commissioner Crandall, and that's what they envisioned is, one side being open, but also aesthetically pleasing. To me, that site now doesn't meet that criteria. I mean, it's just a kind of a ditch. I drove by it, there's nothing special about it. Where I think there could be the potential of doing something special there. And we need to make the applicant aware of the fact that, yeah, he's gonna have to spend some money on some good landscape architecture. But, good landscape doesn't have to be expensive to build or to maintain. So I'd like to kind of open the discussion about that and see what you guys think about that.
Very fair. You want to react to that, or should we go down the line?
Oh, go down the line.
Scott? You may skip if you want to. Back to you.
I'm super sympathetic to the applicant, super sympathetic. And I agree that it could be, you could potentially do something nice. It's possible that it would be nice. I think it's unlikely that, given the demand of the economics of trying to get something in there. So I'm extremely familiar with residential land development. In a traditional site with 60-foot public roadways and 7,200 square foot lots, 7,200 square feet, you get 4 to the acre. The typical RV park is way denser than that. And it has, narrow little, reasonably narrow roads, and you're going to get more land out of that. I mean, the density is going to be proposed to be a lot. That's the only way these things are going to pencil. And I just don't see, like I said, sir, I'm super sympathetic. I honestly am. But I can't squint hard and say an RV park looks like what in my mind is a traditional park. An RV park, people are going to be there literally 24/7. They're going to be living there at a park. Hopefully we don't have people living there, but I guess I shouldn't comment on that. But, normally there's an hour of operation. There's only certain windows when a park is anywhere close to densely used. And I don't, I heard what Commissioner Crandall said and brought out with all the documentation and stuff. I can't squint hard and see this as compatible.
I'm all about owners' rights and private property, and I too am very sympathetic. I see it as park-like. Lawrencewell Village, back in the day, was a very sweet, when we used to play golf up there, very sweet, back in the hills, and that's what I envisioned this to be like. And so I'm supportive of that. And my girls and I used to be up there all the time and play golf. It also kind of reminds me of Cuyamaca, where it's nestled, down away from the public and very, very private. I don't see public being typically bothered by this because it's so down low. I am struggling that it is only park-like, because again, it's overnight parking, though I see you have really good restrictions that you have proposed here. I'm just wondering if possibly that wasn't the right direction to go. But it would be a nice development there. I think the city would benefit from that, especially with the TOT tax that would come back to the city. And La Plata and Pico are very large roads that could support the traffic that would go up there. And it would be good for the community as far as business and families that could come in and enjoy it. We don't have a lot of places to stay overnight. So I would be in support of it, but I'm having a difficult time. Like I said, it's park-like, it's not park. I just wonder if there's a different direction you could go that would be a better, quicker path to success. So I would be supporting of moving this forward so that you could ferret out everything that we shared tonight and possibly come back with something that is similar that you could actually show us to say it will look like this. And when you're speaking about a park, it's going to have the trees, it's going to have the ponds, the brooks, the recreational areas, and it's going to be a nice fit in that area. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Gary, did you want to chime in?
Well, I think, thinking over about it, the only way I could possibly move forward, because this 505 is a little somewhat confusing, because although it limits principal uses that are permitted to those two addresses, then it comes back with the CUT provision, CUP, that allows parks, athletic fields, and recreation centers, which would be all private. Because agriculturally, you can't alter the natural topography. So I would only be willing to make an interpretation that this interpretation only pertains to the two addresses that are listed under recreational facilities. That would mean it would exclude all the other open space designation.
Real quick, is what he's saying, is that something that makes sense to you as far as implementation?
Yeah, if that's what the commission decides, then.
Okay,
we
so can you-
alter the resolution.
So what you're suggesting, just so I'm clear on it, is that,
But the interpretation is specific to those two addresses, only in the open space.
and the addresses that you're speaking to are which
The
addresses?
200 Avenida La Plata and the 111 Avenida Vista,
Oh, okay.
Montana.
Which is your address? Yeah, okay. Lifetime is probably where the 111 is, and that they don't really, that wouldn't matter. Okay. Okay, got it. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Davis, your thoughts?
So the applicant's address, is that the 200 Avenida La Plata? Yes. Okay. I do agree that there's, with all the statements, it's kind of a fascinating situation. And whatever road is taken, it's going to be uphill.
No pun intended.
So I think the topo, not messing with the topo, is focused on the agricultural as opposed to when it says CUPs for athletic fields, obviously we'd have to mess with the topo on that. And also recreation center, right? We'd have to I see a recreation center, and Chris, am I right? It could be a building. It could be a YMCA.
Yeah.
So that obviously is messing with the topography. So I see this kind of a balance between parks and rec and athletic field leaning more towards a park. If it's designed properly and you orientate the RVs, not everybody can afford a coach, okay? So the RVs and the coach towards the golf course and not toward, and you protect the back, that corridor, and you protect the sides. This is all down the road, but you protect that with some trees, so you still have that green passage. I could see a path. I can't, but, and then I know that this facility is a high-end facility. This is not going to be something that's thrown in there that the guy living on my corner is going to be visiting. I tell you that. It's going to be a different kind of RV, meaning the guy just squatting on my corner on the street. So, and then there's nighttime hours you could enforce. You could quiet time starting at 9 o'clock. You could really protect with lighting pollution. We could do a lot of things like this. Again, rec center, athletic fields, I think rec center's imposing as heck. So, and swipe of a pen from Sacramento, this could be high-density housing someday. ADU, junior ADU, what do we got going on? Okay, so trees to protect, and yeah, that's about it.
Okay, thanks.
I do want to say one thing. We were talking about landscaping and all. According to our code, you're not going to be able to put trees in this. And that's going to be a real problem, yeah. You can't obstruct any of the view from, that's why they're spaced so far apart on La Pata, the tree spacing, and there's a section in there that says you can't do it, so that's why I came.
When they built the golf course.
Yeah.
Mark, if you wouldn't mind, could you come up to the podium just so we can capture your comments?
Just to clarify for you. Two things. One, when they built the golf course, they first built an 18-hole golf course, then they added another 9. They didn't do any more because it would have got very expensive to keep going. That's my understanding. I wasn't there. Secondly, the area that we're talking about is all below street level. And in fact, when they built the golf course, they planted like 500 pine trees in there. So history says that they've done a whole bunch of things.
It may be when you're right next to it, but as you drive up La Pata and you just pass the last commercial building, there at the intersection area, you can see the whole site.
Our site that we're talking about is all below street level. I'm not sure what you were.
Daylights,
Huh?
daylights, that parcel you're talking about, daylights right at that last building with the street.
Now,
Okay, but you'd have to go down and look back, but there's nothing behind us.
People drive up the street also.
it's really hard to, I've ridden
I-
my
I
bike up
don't-
there.
I-
It's way down.
I used to
down
take my
there.
dogs to the dog park up at the top of the street.
So
Yeah.
I went by there for years, I had no idea there was
No
a
idea
golf
it was
course
there,
there.
yeah.
No idea. My neighbor is a member there, and I'm like, where's Bella Colina?
Yeah, it's
Oh, it's up
way-
on La Plata.
Yeah, it's way
I've
down.
never seen that, what are you talking about? And it's like, oh, it's Wade, you gotta go down on the hill. I mean, you cannot see that from La Plata
I agree, you can't.
at all. You don't even know it's there.
The only time I.
But what I want to do is get us away from that, because now we're getting to the
talking about the
specifics.
interpretation.
We're talking about, I want to pull us back to a view of just the interpretation. And then at the time that, should this interpretation move forward, an application come forward, all the things that you're talking about, Commissioner Crandall, come into play for sure. But I don't believe they come into play at this time. Interpreting, I believe, if I can just take my turn, thank you, Ms. Mark. The way I'm viewing our assignment tonight is we have a question to answer. And the question is, we have a Rancho San Clemente specific plan where if there is ambiguity in an allowed use, it comes to the Planning Commission to clarify. And so that's what we're doing. We're clarifying a use. And the principal uses currently permitted in open space include with nothing by right, public recreation, trails, and utilities. The recreation facilities that are currently existing, the golf club, which is Mr. Zane's property, as well as the tennis club, which has been referenced as Lifetime, which is, in my view, a very intense use, as well as minor public utility projects by outside agencies. That's by right. Then with a conditional use permit, currently, parks, athletic fields, and recreation centers are permitted. Agricultural uses are permitted if they do not alter the natural topography. The question we're being asked is, could an RV park be a conditional use? That's the question. So in my examination of just that question, putting all things aside regarding what an actual application would look like, because that's not what we're answering tonight. At least that's my view of what we're doing tonight. Putting all that specific stuff aside, is an RV park similar in use as a park, athletic field, and a recreation center? Now, I have some personal experience with this, so I'm trying to also just look at this from the San Clemente perspective, but I owned a very expensive fifth wheel that was like 32 feet long, and I traveled the entire United States with that, and I've visited probably 100 RV parks in the United States. I know exactly what good ones look like and horrible ones look like, and what awesome ones look like, how they function, what the intensity is, what the use is, the noise level, all of it. I've lived it for years with my wife and our dogs. And so in my mind, I have examples that I can, in my life experience, that I can compare to an athletic field or a rec center, and I, in my mind, can make a finding that, in fact, an RV park would be compatible with those uses that are currently allowed as a conditional use permit. Now, whether a specific application comes through or not that would meet our standards and all the rest, don't know. That would be another day. But for now, the question being asked, in my view, as far as function of use, finding number one, in my personal opinion, I'm going to say yes. And finding number two, impacts of use, I would also say, compared to a rec center, I would say that an RV park is less impactful by quite a bit. Now, so that's my perspective. If there are concerns that we have, I'd like to hear what those are. Maybe we can take Chair Pro Tem McCacken's suggestion and restrict the finding simply to the properties that are currently listed in item C, where the uses are permitted. That's a possible remedy for that concern. We could also apply the same agricultural restriction that do not alter natural topography. What I feel like we have here, if we did that, now we're limiting it to just the site that's well below grade. And at that point, I think it's very realistic to entertain the idea that an application of this type of use would be appropriate for that area. So that's my sense of it, and I'm just trying to keep us kind of on point on the question. And so maybe at this point, we could see if there's any specific concerns that we want to get on the table together and try and pull this together to an answer. Or we could go, if someone wants to make a motion, I'm open to that as well.
Well, I don't have any concern. I'd be willing to make a motion that I can find staff's findings and approve their interpretation if it's solely applicable to the two addresses listed as recreational facilities in that specific.
That would be
plan.
under section 505 of the specific plan, section 2, subsection C.
Right.
That would be
Two addresses,
in your motion.
right. What are the exact addresses? The 200?
I'll read it for you, I have it right here. It's 200 Avenida La Plata and the one at 111 Avenida Vista, Montana.
That would be my motion.
And just for clarification administratively, or I just want to look at our city planner and I want to look at our senior planner, any concerns with that motion?
No, I think it's still
What-
within the scope of the applicant's request, just clarifying.
It answers the question before us
Narrowing the scope.
even further.
Then you can apply to it.
I have some draft changes if that's where the commission wants to go.
I got a question on that whole process.
Run those by the attorney, just to make sure.
If,
We still got some
if we're only
discussion
Yeah.
applying this to one property or another property, are we creating a new zone? Why not?
Because the planning.
Is there
commission has
going to be a
the ability
deed
to-
restriction on the zone,
the planning
on the
commission-
property?
Where that interpretation.
Is it possible to create a new zone for those specific two properties?
You're not going to be able to rezone, that's why I brought it up. You can't rezone the open space. That isn't going to happen. But,
Just to be clear, are you suggesting that the motion would not be
I just.
implementable? Okay. Let me just procedure, let me just keep things straight. I'm going to second the motion so we can have some discussion about the motion. And before I open it up to commission discussion, Christopher, let me turn it over to you to see if you want to maybe give us a little bit more guidance, as you were alluding to, that you had some definitions you wanted to put forth.
Well, I have some draft text changes that I'd like to run by fellow staff before, if the commission wants to move in that direction, it'd be nice to have 5 minutes to speak with fellow staff and then discuss the changes with you.
Or they want to bring it back?
5 minutes just to talk it over.
Okay, why don't we talk, we'll talk amongst ourselves if you guys want to do that now? Jonathan, is that,
Take a 5-minute break?
yeah, should we,
We can't talk amongst ourselves.
on the dais, we certainly can, yeah. We can discuss the motion further if you guys want to go
Would it be
ahead.
better to let staff work this out and get it absolutely correct
And bring it back?
and bring it back?
I'm confident that we could do it tonight.
I'd rather do it.
I'd rather do it tonight as well.
This isn't gonna be a big change.
Okay.
So maybe it's 3 minutes.
Yeah, why don't recess for 5 minutes, give the staff some time, and then we'll reconvene, all right? So we'll reconvene at 7:35. Right.
Oh, I can't discuss it.
So this text would read as follows, where
Chris, where are you?
Attachment 1 resolution, page 5. in the staff report. Is everybody there?
Okay, yes.
So
Yeah.
where recreation facilities are permitted at 111 Avenida Vista, Montana, and 200 Avenida La Plata would be added at the end of the title of the resolution?
Oh, right up at the top?
Yeah, at the very end of that. So after it says park use, right after that.
Gotcha, okay.
That same text would be added to the beginning on the next page, section 2, right after where it says park use. That first sentence. You see there? Very beginning. And then in section 3, same thing at the very end, after it says Rancho San Clemente specific plan. It's at the bottom of page 2.
Okay.
And so, that's the main change. And then the only other thing I would suggest is in the first recital on page 1, going back to page 1, is where it says, whereas the applicant, first one, is right after it says in the first sentence, portion of the existing golf course, just say of the existing golf course at 200 Avenida La Plata.
Gotcha.
And that's our recommendation.
I'm wondering if we even need to include the 111 Vista, Montana. To me, that's not, I don't know if we even need to include that.
Can I explain? The reason being is that if we're tying this to this idea of wherever it says recreational facilities, then we just did it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the category includes both of those. So if we're gonna tie it to that, that's where we're coming from.
Okay. All right, so do we need to restate the motion, or can we just incorporate by reference your added text?
I think you could go by reference to the added text with the edits provided by staff.
Okay.
And I can,
Are you open to that amendment to your motion? And I am as a second. Jonathan, where you are with all of this?
I'm comfortable with those changes. Just stating again for the record, clearly the commission still is thinking that this is a conditional use permit process and is simply referencing or incorporating by reference to other addresses. And as part of your discussions, arrived at that, acknowledging that there are already private recreation developments at those properties. And so this type of an accessory use at those locations, but still through a conditional use permit, may be acceptable depending on the application in the future. So that's just a quick summary of what I'm hearing. I hope that that's accurate, but I'm comfortable with those language changes.
Okay.
Can I,
Discussion, yes.
Can I ask a quick question on that? Yeah, that's a super interesting point, because you're referencing recreational facilities under permitted uses and using that subsection, but then you're dropping it into the conditional use. Is that language appropriate as written in the resolution, do you feel?
I feel that that's appropriate in the resolution in that, as Commissioner Crandall mentioned earlier, we're not making a zoning text amendment today. This is an interpretation. So we have some latitude through this resolution to acknowledge that the intent is that this is similar to a park use, will require a conditional use permit like a park use, and simply in addition to that, that the commission feels that those address references are appropriate.
Further discussion on the motion. Commissioner Crandall.
Do we have a definition of a park in, we don't have one in the zoning code, correct?
I don't remember one, but we could pull it up if you like.
Part of this would be that we get one?
You can make a separate direction in your motion to suggest in a future zoning cleanup that we add a definition if there isn't already one. I'd have to check if there is one or not.
I didn't run across one, that's why I asked.
Regarding park, I mean, there's discussion of park use, park-like, definition of park, but we're looking at section under private open space standards. So how does park even come into it?
Well, as soon as the word is used, you go to the definitions in the zoning code to see what does park mean.
Where is the word used?
Under principal uses permitted,
Yeah, I don't see the word park.
the conditional uses.
Oh, under the conditional uses.
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
3A. Private park.
But why would somebody create a private park?
For your kids at Bella Colina. I would
get
say,
that,
I would
okay.
ask the chairman, listen, we haven't voted yet on this motion.
So I just want to make
Let's
sure
get that off
we
the
can
wall.
fully discuss, I want to make sure everyone's had the opportunity to fully express their point of view on the motion. So Commissioner McCann, are you,
I know how I voted.
okay. Are we ready to vote then? Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and go down the dais and just call out each commissioner for their vote. So we'll start with Commissioner Prescott Loeffler.
That would be a yes.
Okay, we have aye. Commissioner McCann,
No.
Vice Chair Camp,
Aye.
Chair Pro Tem McCacken,
Aye.
Commissioner Crandall,
No, I cannot make the findings.
and Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well, so it passes 5-2. No being Commissioners Crandall and McCann. And that concludes this agenda item.
Chair, real fast, there, just for the record, there is a 10-day appeal on this decision.
Thanks for that added clarification. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for that lively debate and discussion on the interpretation of RV parks in open space. So thank you, and thank you, Mr. Zane, for being here tonight and speaking.
Thank you all for your time, your energy, and your efforts. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Next item on our agenda is 9B. It's the General Plan Strategic Implementation Program Update. And I believe that is also Mr. Wright is going to lead us in that discussion.
That is me. Good evening. This is a city process to update the general plan strategic implementation program. This is a work program that is done annually with some input from the planning commission in a meeting like this prior to the budget process. So the budget process is ramping up, and this is all about is to set priorities for how the general plan is implemented. And each department goes through and looks at any direction the city council or planning commission, public comments have given some indication of things that may become priorities, as well as time that might be available outside the normal course of business, because honestly, most of our staff time is doing day-to-day ongoing implementation of the general plan, like reviewing the zoning ordinance, talking to the public to inform them and whatnot. And so through that process, working with the departments, we came up with a list of projects that are recommended to be done in the next 5 years. It's a 5-year work program. And then which projects would be after that. We have gone through this year and made quite a number of changes to the format of this program and hope that it becomes a better communication tool and priority setting tool for the city council when they set the budget. And I think it's important just to highlight that. So I want to open up the last year program, and you're going to see that it had this large matrix of all these pages. a lot of pages. And in staff's view, we wanted to make this a lot simpler, just to come down to what are we gonna do in the next 5 years, and then what should we do after the 5 years? So I have a list of projects we could go over if you like. It's in your staff report. In addition to that, long-term financial plan paper, there's a matrix that just provides some additional details, such as the expected start year, some of these projects, finish year, if any budget needs are associated with an item, and then some notes. And that concludes our presentation.
Just to clarify, Exhibit A1, that's the new simplified format?
It's that in addition to these attachments. So this exhibit would be the long-term financial plan white paper, right? It's like the
Gotcha.
summary.
Yes.
And then attached to that would be this
A1.
matrix. This is the main matrix. And then there's some additional ones like which project changes are we proposing, right? So
But
change
we
it
can
to-
focus on A1, for example, for the highlights, right? These bullet points here are the main ones that the Community Development Department is putting forth. And I think I can recognize every one of those points on there as something that is of importance and value to the processes that we oversee and are involved in. So that's my takeaway on this. Yeah, and I think it's helpful that you organize it like this too. Yeah, because I remember in the past going through line item by line item on this big spreadsheet and then getting kind of confused. So, and also thinking that we actually had some kind of leverage to change things around, which we kind of don't. So this is really more of a receive and file, I think is what you're asking us to do tonight. Is that correct?
And you can make recommendations, and that your input will go to the city council in the minutes.
Okay.
So you can provide input.
If we think that something needs to be moved around or added or removed.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, you can make recommendations.
got it. Okay, thank you. Let's open it up to anyone that got questions.
I have a question. So this is a pretty ambitious list here, especially this, I don't know how many pages, multi-page list. Are all of these planned for the next 5 years? I
So.
like a lot of them.
First, this page here that you see on the screen, it summarizes the projects in this first column by department. Okay? And then this is just a high-level simplified list. And then this, just some additional detail is this table. That table stops at this page here. So that's page 14.
So all these on Exhibit A1 are supported by additional detail
Yes.
on this, how many pages? 34?
Yes, that one page, the exhibit A1 corresponds to this matrix. It's just a simplified list. So see right here how it says due by 2029, this project here about signage. If you go to this list, it's in here. It's just a simpler line item.
Okay. Some of these don't have a year associated with them, but they're still,
Sorry.
some of these don't have a year on them. Some of them do.
Yeah,
24,
the-
25.
The ones that are proposed in the next 5 years, we try to identify some timelines if we had information to share.
Okay, so are we to comment on which we think should be a higher priority, or which should possibly be removed, or what are you looking
Christopher, if I could interject real quick. The primary purpose is going to be that the Planning Commission observes this list and agrees that this list is consistent with the general plan. That's like goal number one, is to make sure that you agree that these items that have been placed on here by staff are consistent with the general plan. And then as Christopher was mentioning, yes, like we're always open to feedback and we can incorporate that in the minutes if you think that there's other initiatives that you'd like to see added to this list or a timeline modified, we can do that. But again, the primary purpose of this item is making sure the council relies on you to evaluate this list and say this complies with our general plan.
I have a comment just to start it off as far as business mindset, right? I see target dates and everything so forth. For the minutes, I think we prioritize our income and our expenses. I see on here it talks about reviewing the leases, the citywide leases, and we get that done by end of 26. That's our income. Why aren't we looking at that like priority? So that's how I feel, just income versus expenses should be prioritized. Everything else we could, however it happens, but that's the bottom line for the city's dollars. That's how I see it.
Comments?
Well, for instance, under Public Works, the last one there, adopt a living streets model design manual. I mean, how does that connect with the general plan, for instance? That's pretty vague.
It's in the mobility
There are
section.
very specific references in the general plan to living streets. And they call them out.
Okay.
Like Los Molinas is one of that boulevard is a living street in the general plan. There's that. But what does that mean? I have no idea. It's in the general plan and it says it, and I'm like, that sounds cool, but what is it? This hopefully might explain more of that.
I think a lot of these are really in the council's purview, and it's our job just to pass it on, saying it's consistent with the general plan, because they're the dollar and cents. I mean, we can make recommendations, but I'm just ready to approve this and to move it to the council, and they can cut and paste if they want.
I would agree with that, except for the Miramar. As it says, started in 2017, and target date of completion is 2024, due by 2029. So that's the only one I'm highlighting, but I agree with what you're saying. This should be in the council's
They
purview.
are allowed to finish them early.
That sounded like a motion to me.
Okay, I move to approve resolution number PC 24-001.
Second.
I just want to chime in with one comment, and then we'll do the vote. Just for staff, we heard when we had our study session with our development community, the importance of having a local coastal program. And I noticed that's the second bullet. So that's great. But one of the concerns that I have, and I believe I kind of heard it, was, are we really ready to be the lead agency and process applications in the coastal zone? One thing to ask for it, it's another thing to get it, and have the staff that are trained to handle the volume and handle the issues and the complexity. And this might be the opportunity to educate the council on, be careful what you ask for, because if we do get granted our LCP, now we're the lead agency, now we're the one that's going to do a majority of the work. And, oh, by the way, the most controversial projects are in the coastal zone, and they take a lot of time. And so that would be my only caution and advice to the staff, that they use this as an opportunity to honestly and realistically assess your workloads and your staffing levels and go to the council with your best step forward on, this is what it's going to take for us to process applications in the coastal zone once we do get it approved. So. Okay, so thank you for letting me say my piece. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve this?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Very good. Did you have a question?
Sure, yes. Does it include the suggestion by Commissioner Davis?
As I believe my intention, I believe what Jonathan was mentioning is, his comment will be in the note, in the minutes, and we'll move forward.
Thank you.
And I'm hopeful that my comments will be in the minutes as well, and that moves forward too.
And I hope my comments about the Miramar Theater will be.
There you go. So we've got 3 comments to be put in the minutes. Okay, glad we could clarify that. We are on the home stretch. Christopher, thanks for spending the night with us today. We enjoy having you. And thank you for your good work on an ongoing basis. We appreciate you. Thank you. Good night, Christopher. Old business is item 10, which we have none, which takes us to item 11, reports of commissioners and staff. Before we go to staff, any commissioner want to make a report? Okay. Jonathan, did you have any comments you want to make either on the future agenda or anything else that's going on?
Sure, I'll just give one quick note. We are going to, I drafted a request for proposal for some contract staff assistance in the next few months. One with myself having been out, and then David Carrillo is an associate planner on our team, and he is going to be out for the same reason. So he's expecting his first child in in March. I don't know where November came from, in March. So that's going to be something I'm looking forward, is getting some additional support while he's out. So just an FYI, you might see some different faces in that period of time. And that's the only update that I have for today. So congratulations to him. And I am back, so it's good to see you all.
Was it a boy or girl?
Also a boy.
Boy.
Yeah.
Quick question. On the, I don't see any items on the TFA for the next meeting. Is the next meeting going to be canceled?
Potentially. So but at this point, we were past the public hearing notification period, so there will not be any public hearings on that agenda, but we still could have new business items. So we'll send the cancellation if we know that there will be no new business items. But for instance, all the things that you see coming from Public Works typically do not require that public hearing line item. So we'll confirm with that team, and if there are none to add, then we'll send out that cancellation.
If they're minor in nature, and non-urgent, would you just push them off to the next meeting to consolidate?
Yes, we would.
I think that's the sentiment of the whole group. Yeah, thank you for that. I just think for everybody's information, and maybe for the one person that might watch this on YouTube, I found a very insightful that our city manager made some comments last night at the council meeting about the coastal bluffs in our city. And we're all aware of the extreme pressure that they're under with all the intense rain and the nature of the bluffs being that some of them are sliding. And I, in particular, have raised this issue for years, just in this section, like, what are we doing about it? And I was really happy to hear him say that he believes we have quite a large number of rules and policy, but they're spread around the city in different departments. Public Works has some, Community Development has some. Maybe there are some rules just not attached even to a department. And that what he's going to be doing is leading an effort to consolidate and organize them all in one place so that it's easy for residents to see what our coastal bluff policies are. And I would just ask that if we could have the opportunity to be in the workflow of that. I don't know if we would be allowed to maybe review it, discuss it, make comments on it, but if the city manager is open to that, and if my colleagues are open to that, I think it would be a good use of our time to take a look at those policies. and just have the opportunity to discuss it. And if we had some input, give it. I don't know how you guys all feel, but to me, that's a real hot button, and it's a real important issue in our city. And it seems to me one of the only times we actually make the news. And it does, to me, I think we should be proactive, and I think this is a good first step. What are your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
So there's a call early tomorrow morning, actually. So I'd say step one, we probably won't be able to engage you in just because the urgency of trying to get information out. We're going to be producing some kind of a flyer that consolidates some of that information or reproduces, like we've always had bluffs and we've always had slides. The first mayor of San Clemente's home slid into the canyon. So it is a historic issue, but yes, it's been obviously more frequent recently. So we're going to get some advisory information out very soon. But through that call, I'll share the interest in participating in any ongoing information or development of policies related to the bluffs.
Okay, great. That's great. Okay, is there any other discussion under this item from anybody? Okay, hearing none. Jonathan, it sounds like you would like us to adjourn to the 21st. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move that we adjourn to the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission to be held on Wednesday, February 21st, 2024, at 6 p.m. in the City Hall, San Clemente City Hall Council Chambers.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Me.
It's unanimous. Stand adjourned. Sorry.